My name is Jeff LABOVITZ. I'm the Regional Director for IOM in East and the Horn of Africa. I cover 10 countries, and in that region, there's so many migration issues, and it's the majority of movements is actually within Africa. It's not coming to Europe. And we have three major migration processes going on at the same time. One is the Mediterranean crossing, and that's actually not so large from East Africa. But East Africa has a lot of displacement issues, and it's got a lot of people on the move. Of those who are coming to Europe, there's Ethiopians and Eritreans, Sudanese and some Somalis, and maybe very small numbers from other countries. And I think it's less than a couple thousand on average per month. Going south to South Africa, that traditionally was a larger migration flow, which is slowed down with xenophobic violence in South Africa, but it's still about 1,000 per month. And the biggest movement, which is the second biggest maritime movement in the world, and people don't talk about very much, is about 10,000 people a month going from Ethiopia and Somalia, often through Djibouti, over boats to Yemen, which is in civil war, and then to Saudi Arabia. And that's quite a perilous route, where they're going through the lowest part of Africa, which is incredibly hot, and the poorest, those who can't afford smugglers, are walking great distances. And so we see a lot of deaths in the hot parts during the walk. And when they get on boats, they go across, and then they're in a civil war area. And there's a lot of vulnerabilities and sensitivities. We don't see many women. About 1/3 are women. We know that. But we don't see them because they're easier to match with jobs, and the smugglers pick them up usually close to the country of origin, and they're facilitated more overland through cars. We see more men, and we see unaccompanied minors, because it's harder for them to get jobs. About 20% are children under the age of 18, and about 5% are under 15. And it's usually an anomaly when you see young children, but here very regularly, 10, 11, 12 years old, taking this crazy route through these dangerous areas. And there's real protection issues and dangers. Now, apart from the migratory movements, we have 27 million people in need of humanitarian assistance. That's huge. And that's probably doubled over the past year or 2 years. And it's doubled because of complex emergencies, displacement, forced displacement, which we could have avoided with good governance. It's because of famine, or pre-famine, because of droughts, or a combination of those, as well as labor migration issues, mixed migration and mixed migration flows. We have 11 million internally displaced, 4.5 million refugees, and the countries around are hosting big numbers. I think that Uganda is the biggest now in all of Africa. Ethiopia is not far behind. Millions of people they're hosting. There's not a single country in my region that's either not giving refugees, or providing displacement, or hosting refugees. And so they're also listening to the policies of Europe and how that applies to them as host countries or sending countries. It's a really dynamic time, and there's a lot of reasons for movement. And associated with that, legal protection is limited, and so a lot of people go irregularly. A part of the work with IGAD, which is an intergovernmental agency among African countries representing my region, is they convene and work on migration policies. We're working together on national coordination mechanisms, interagency ministerial approaches to addressing migration issues. We have migrant accommodation centers, locations where people on the move can go when they're stranded or abused or they need help. We can offer return assistance and reintegration assistance. Tomorrow, I'll be going from here to Brussels, where we're going to have a steering board meeting with the European Union on something called the Reintegration Fund. And that's the first time we've been able to look at not only return of individuals who want to return, and this is from Africa, but also targeted integration strategies, how we can look at why, some of the root causes, why they're leaving. That said, it's not going to be easy. I mean, there's such broad displacement, and a lot of it is for environmental factors and political factors, which in some cases are getting worse. And then there's the opportunity there's no opportunities for legal migration and people go irregularly. We would love to look at methodologies where there's protection, embedded processes for safe migration, legal labor opportunities. So far, that's not really forthcoming, but it's something that we need to work on with host countries, and as well as the transit countries. We need to have safe transportation and protection mechanisms embedded into those processes. So those are part of the overall strategies. With interest now over the Mediterranean, there's more interest in my region than ever before. They're not coming in as big a numbers as they are from Central and Western Africa. But there's more displacement and instability right now in many of the countries which I'm covering. And if we don't address some of those issues and root causes, when the social safety networks break down, they'll be the next on the move. I want to share that not all migration is bad. If you're looking at population stabilization and population stabilization techniques, part of that is through remittances of people who go abroad and send that back home. And so it's an important link for us also to understand. If you stopped migration from my region, I think you'll have more outward migration. It's a contradiction. But when people are getting jobs and sending it home, their families are not moving as much. And so I think we need to realize that. And there's also a great disparity between the rich and the poor in my countries. Kenya, where I live, has a great middle class, and there's extreme wealth amongst the Kenyans. But if you're going outside not far, there's the biggest slum in the world, over 1 million people in Kibera. And so there's great disparities, and we need to address those. Now, I think that looking at solutions for asylum claims before people go on the move is something which has been proposed. I think it's going to be tested, and we'll see how it works. Certainly, it is so dangerous, and there's so much exploitation en route that we need to address some of those issues. And if people are suffering from genuine persecution claims and they're convention refugees, then I think accessing them at an earlier stage is going to help them. Now, whether or not that's going to stop migration is something which needs to be looked at. People look at different options, and it's a coping mechanism. It's part of the social safety network. So those are interesting ideas. I was very excited to hear your President Macron speak at the General Assembly. It was just yesterday or the day before, and saying that he's looking at resettlement activities as well. In fact, he talked about UNHCR and IOM being partners to look at that. So he's looking at different solutions, and that's a leadership role. There's been a reduction globally in countries in looking at resettlement numbers. And Canada has stepped up for one. With France stepping up now, that's a big statement in trying to work together on durable solutions. So constructively working together, and the leadership we have with France addressing those issues is something which is welcomed. We want to work together.